we will be covering suppliers and procurement items. So the agenda would be to cover the procurement items such as catalog item, purchase items. We'll see how we can create those items and how we can use them eventually in our coming chapters by creating requisition, purchase orders, etc. We'll also study about the suppliers, and we'll study about the importance of having supplier category, what is a must rule. We'll study about supplier groups as well and how to perform any changes on the supplier. So we'll see how we can set up the supplier in the system and what are the information that is needed when we are setting up the suppliers. And we'll also study about the AP part, basically the account posting rule for spend, which is by now you would know that it's very important rule for P2P module. So we'll study about account posting rule as well. So we already have seen that in our previous chapters, but this time we would be configuring the account posting rule based on the spend categories that we have created already in the last chapter. So we'll use that and few more information if applicable from the um, configuration that we'll do in this chapter. So moving on, first of all, catalog item and purchase items. So both of these constitute or combinedly, they will be known as the procurement items. So basically now what is a procurement item? Procurement item is all the items that are available as goods or services for procurement transactions. Okay. So basically anything you want to buy, and if it is going through a P2P cycle, so that is your procurement item. Okay. So that can consist of your catalog items, purchase items, or something called as web items as well. Okay. So now talking about the catalog item. So catalog item are generally associated with the supplier contract. Okay. And they would represent a goods or a service available from the supplier. Okay. So think of it like you already have a supplier contract. Okay. You can think of it like for you, suppose if I am going to purchase some items from Amazon from a particular supplier. Okay. So whatever items that particular supplier is offering me, that would be called as the catalog item. So whatever items that he has in his catalog, so those are the catalog items. And generally for the businesses, supplier contracts are already created for the go-to items, you can think of it. Okay, for example, office supplies or your food vendor, so those are also essentially the suppliers. Okay, and the contracts are generally created as we previously also discussed about the service agreements. So those sort of contracts companies generally have that created with their suppliers. Okay, so whatever items they are offering from that contract as a part of their catalog. So those are named as catalog items. Okay. Um, there is also a concept of punch out vendors in the whole P2P industry as well as in Workday. So what is punch out vendor? So punch out vendor is something that you would go to the vendor's interface. So basically you are accessing the vendor's website and you are making the purchase, as in selecting the items, putting them those items into the cart and making a purchase over there. Okay, so there is an integration involved with the punch out vendors. Okay, so some vendors or some suppliers can be registered in Workday from end to end. Okay, those suppliers can have their purchase items or catalog items in Workday, like those items can be registered in Workday. However, some vendors can have their own websites, okay, wherein they would keep their own, like their catalog. Okay, So how, as a procurement team, like from the buyer perspective, how this happens generally is like they will access the site and will make a purchase from that supplier's website. So we'll study in detail about this in the coming slides. Okay. So the example of punch out vendors would be Staples, Amazon Business, CDW, like that. So these are kind of the vendors. So generally, like when we are talking from the industry perspective also, so these are kind of the big players, and mostly like for, if you think of some other platform also for procurement or for having the P2P in ERP or anything, so these are kind of common vendors which would be tagged as punch out in the systems. So key characteristics are hosted catalog, punch out catalog, pricing, and automation. So, so as we were discussing, that if your supplier is registered in Workday, and like from one of the two cases wherein the supplier is registered in Workday and they have their purchase items or the catalogs item available in the Workday as well. Okay, so that is the hosted catalog. Okay, so you would have the static items loaded into Workday with their details such as name, price, description, etc., etc. And users can directly use the search functionality and add those items into the cart. Then we have the punch out catalog. So users will click on the link in Workday to go to the supplier's website. Okay, to shop, they will add the data into cart. The similar process, but the only difference is that here in punch out, they will add the items into cart from a different website. Whereas for the hosted catalogs, all the activities would be done in Workday itself. Okay. So once in punch out, like once they have selected the items and added into the cart, okay, then the user can create the requisition into the from Workday. So basically, there are APIs involved which will send the messages that so and so items are added and would be available on the Workday as well, from wherein you can create the requisition. So once you create the requisition, then also the API, through API integrations, the message is sent to the supplier's website that they have made a purchase. And if further processing is like for issuing of the purchase order and all, that is also done. So basically, there are some integrations involved wherein Workday and the supplier's website will exchange the the requisition documents or the purchase order documents. Pricing. So it usually has a fixed or a contracted price negotiated with the supplier. So as we were discussing, that generally when the supplier is already registered into the system, so they will have some master agreements or master service agreements being created with, they would have some fixed terms and conditions. And so this is what it is saying, like the pricing is generally fixed. Okay, or it would be based on the agreements that have already been decided and signed upon. So for example, for the service, it cannot, like you cannot have the static pricing like a physical item, like a good. Okay, if a laptop is costing me $1,000, so I cannot equivalently do it for the service. So based on whatever you are buying, the items are already, the prices are already negotiated with the supplier. So the automation part, so definitely, since you, so it's like very easy shopping kind of way, right? And if your catalog items are already available into the system, so the buyer would simply just go the items, the number of items they want, and will create the requisition. So there is no manual process as such involved here. So you would have your requisition documents created, and like the workflow or the business process will be triggered for requisitions, which eventually will create your purchase orders as well. So the whole of, and like if we talk about the nitty-gritties here, um, the supplier information, the item from the catalog, their unit prices and everything, you will get it as auto-populated. So we'll see more about this when we are performing the demo. Now, what is a purchase item? So essentially, like when we started, we said that whatever item that can be procured, whether it's a good or a service, that is our procurement item. Okay. For the catalog item, we understood that generally it is linked to a existing supplier contract. Purchase items, you can consider them as the items which are not associated or which can be or cannot be associated with the supplier contract. Okay. They can be referred to as like standalone items in Workday. Okay. So purchase item here, it's a master data in Workday representing a specific tangible good or service that you can buy repeatedly. So it's not associated with any supplier contract or something. Okay. So the second part clears it more. It's kind of an internal definition of the item. Okay. It's not associated, or it's in, or we can say it's independent of a specific supplier. So here you can select any supplier that would, satisfy your requirement, and you can make a purchase. So the difference here is, for the purchase item, kind of a generic item, okay? Golden record, standard employee laptop, etc. Catalog item is the specific offer from a supplier, okay? For example, you want a specific laptop, okay? So that would become your catalog item. So we will now see how we can create a purchase item. So the task is create purchase item. Okay, I will give, if you see here, my requester here is Ashton Burns and the company is Spectre. Okay, so if let's see if we can proxy with Teresa and create for GMS company. Okay, let's see. Let me do it with Sherry. Create purchase item. Okay, so I want to have iPads. iPad 11 and 256 GB. Okay, I want to keep the same description. Okay, and the spend category that I want to see, let's see with the hierarchy. Okay, computers. Let's see, what do we have in this office? We don't have. Okay, no problem. Let's do with hardware computer. Okay. Now we will add the information. So first of all, see here we just added what is the name of the item and the spend category it belongs to. Okay. So you see one thing that spend category is must have. Okay. So it should be there for the purchase item. So throughout this module, you will see where all the spend category is must have. Okay. Now we will fill in the information about the item overview. Okay. So I first of all I would want to add the prices. Okay. My default ordering price I will keep it as 1000 and currency as USD. Okay. And unit of measure I want to keep it as each. All right. Now, if you see here, we have few more. We can add the item URL, whether it's a preferred item or not. We can also add the tags of the item. Okay. So just like tags for the reporting purposes, maybe. Then the classification of the item, whether it's a goods or service. So I want to keep it as goods. Okay. If I want to add item tag, then what tag can we use? I don't think we have a suitable tag here, so no problem. Then we can also select see through the item defaults. Okay, default as service request, no, because ours is a goods type of item. Okay, tax applicability, accounting treatment, all those things. Let's leave it for now. Okay, lot option. So this will yeah. So this will show you like how many items you can get in a lot. Okay. So if you want to have that all, okay. Then we have for the requisition also any requesting entity and all those things we can add. Then coming over to this line, the line item, unit of measure. So we have kept the unit of measure as each and unit price, I'm keeping it as 1000. Okay. So where is it going to be used? It's going to be used in ordering. Okay. And let's see what else do we have over here. So unit of use or ordering. So we are going to use it for ordering to create a purchase order later on. Okay. You can also do default for ordering, but that's okay. So this is what we have filled in and submit. Okay, we got some error. Let's see default work tag where. Okay. So let's see related work tag. Do we have? Yeah, default required. So you see, we have a related work tag. Okay. So now let's link two things here. First, we saw about the spend category. correct? Like how it is going to be linked into your purchase item. The second thing that we are seeing here is the cost center. So for every item, we have to define a cost center. Okay. So, and you see here, it's a default required work tag. So let's see if we have um 61100. Okay, IT services management. And I'm putting it as my default work tag also. So let's do one thing. Allowed, let's give the user a freedom. They can add any other work tag as well in the cost center. Basically, they can add some other cost center also, but the default cost center, we are keeping it as 61100. Okay. So also, let's look at the other tabs. So item identifier. Okay, right now I'm not seeing any option to add it. So basically here we will see, we can put some numbering over here to identify this item, okay, from a particular manufacturer. Then we can add the supplier information as well. Okay, but right now if you see, we haven't added any supplier information at the moment. We are only creating the item. So yeah, so we were checking the other tabs. So we have this alternate item identifier, supplier information you can add. So in this way, like you can create the catalog item as well. Then we can also add the inventory site options. So basically, if your supply chain management module is also linked with P2P, like it's also configured. So here you can add the option for the inventory site. Okay, so basically, inventory site would be a place, generally kind of a warehouse where you like the supplier generally keeps their goods. Okay, and you can also add the item substitutes. So in case if that particular iPad 11-inch 256 GB is not available, so what are the other item substitutes to this particular iPad? So we can add that. Okay, but for now, for this demo, we have just filled in the overview here about the pricing and what is the unit of measure and the default work tag, which is 61100 IT service management cost center. Okay, so three things to be taken care of. One is your spend category. Okay, you should definitely define the spend category. The third one, apart from default price and all, that is kind of understood. The second one would be unit of measure. Okay, you should define what is a unit of measure. Okay, and the third one is in the related work tags that you would be defining the default work tag. Okay, and I have kept it as required on transaction. So that's it. Okay, let me just submit it. Okay, so we have created this particular item. Now let me create one more item for the service. Okay, I will the name as HVAC maintenance. Okay, it's already in use, so no problem. Well, one. So the item description and the spend category, let's see by hierarchy, or let's see by this thing, repair. It sells by repair. So we have equipment repair as the spend category. Okay. And now let's come to default ordering price. I am keeping it as 50. Okay. Currency, USD. Unit of measure, we will do it as default as service request. Okay. So now we are creating a service request, basically a service type of item. And the unit, let's see if we have something related to service. No problem. Okay, no problem. So we are not having any unit of measure because it's a service type. Okay, but we have defaulted it as service request. Okay, so what is this item doing? Like it's a service type of item. Okay, that's okay. So now we do not need to have here in the unit of measure because we have not defined anything. If we go to related work tag, we can add a default work tag. Let's keep it 61100. Okay. Now I'll submit it. So we have now successfully created another service type of item. Okay. Now let's see another item. Let's create another item wherein we will link a supplier to this particular item. So my item name is t-shirt. Item description. This one is in use, no problem. T-shirts. GMS. Okay. So we added the name, spend category, advertising. We do not have advertising. Okay, no problem. Let's create a spend category. Okay. Do we have anything to create from here? No. So I'm just going to create a spend category that I need. Maintain spend category. I'm creating it without hierarchy. Add. Advertising. Okay. Spend category usage in procurement, supplier invoice, ad hoc payment. Okay. Anything else that can be added? I'm good. Okay, so we created the spend category, which we are going to use it here. Uh, let's just refresh. Let's see why this spend category is not populating up here. Okay, might be some security because let me just proxy with. I think the proxy is refreshed. It's proxy with Sherry. Okay. Um, okay. No problem. Let's proceed with some other spend category for now, but we'll get back to it that why we are not able to see that particular one. So for now, I'm just going to add the spend category as beach products. Okay. And let's put the default price as 10 and USD each. Okay. And for the supplier information. So we'll add a supplier here. I will add Corporate Express as the supplier. Item identifier is the item that we have created. Okay. The description is auto populated. Now here we can keep the sourcing priority as 1. Okay. Currency is already USD. Now for the pricing, we already yeah. So we already have the pricing here copied from the previous tab, and we can add a minimum order quantity as 5. Okay. So you see here my unit of measure, unit price. Now I have added the minimum order quantity. All right. Then what else? If we want to have some advanced pricing and all, that also we can define. But for now, the intent here is to link a purchase item with a supplier. Okay, so we created before, first of all, in the item overview, we followed the same route that we have done for the other two items. And in the supplier information, we have added the supplier information and its sourcing priority. Let's just check for the related work tag also. So default work tag, I'm giving 61100 and submit. Okay, we got some error. Choose what is the error. Okay, so our default pricing that we had to select here, submit. Now it should be gone. Yeah, so we have now created another item which is linked to supplier. So before moving to account posting rule, let's see some other task that we can access. So if you want to load the catalog items, okay, so that can be done through catalog load request. So catalog load request. So herein you can load all the items related to a supplier at once. Okay, so you can use that. Right now we are to catalog for the supplier. This way you can add, okay, or you can create a supplier catalog from here also. So now let's create a purchase item for the supplier catalog. Okay, so the task here is create purchase item. Again, okay, I will be giving the name as coffee machine. Okay, the spend category we have no. Uh, vending machines. Okay. And ordering price, I'm keeping it at 1200 USD each. Each. That's it. Let's click on submit. Okay, so this is the one item that we created, coffee machine. Now let's create another item. Water cooler. Giving the same spend category. That I'm keeping it as 800 USD each. 800. Okay, submit. Okay. Now we have created two items. Now we will create a supplier catalog. Okay, so the task is create supplier catalog. Okay, corporate express vending. So we will eventually add items here. So my supplier is Corporate Express. No problem. And currency I'm keeping at USD. Okay. Now we can click on load items. Okay, so you see we got the screen that we were seeing earlier as well. Click on OK. Click on add catalog item, coffee machine. Sorry, purchase item, coffee machine. Okay. We will put a number here. What is the name that we express vending, and our supplier category was vending machines, right? So let's put the item identifier here, BM001. So it's kind of a unique number. Okay. So if you see the other information here, the unit is each. We have the unit of measure. Okay. Minimum order quantity, we can keep it as 1. Okay. And default. This time, if we don't keep default, let's see what would happen. All right, so I have added one item. Then again add, okay, what is the error? Select default. Then add. So now you see first item is added here. Now I'll add water machine, and this one I will give it as 002. Okay, so here also we have got the price and minimum quantity. I'm keeping it as 1. Okay, all right. So now we have added 2 items. Now I will submit it. So now I have my catalog for 2 items. So I can see here, if you want to view the supplier catalog, the task would be view supplier catalog. So I went in from the business process area. Okay, I went through that route and opened the supplier catalog, and you can see here what are the different items added. All right, if I want to change something, related action, update image. Okay, that's it. So here is my purchase item. If I want to edit the item, I can select from here because I see the spend category as DNU. Okay, so it must have been by mistake. Okay, so if we see here for the cat, so since now, if we see here, since this is now linked to the catalog item, okay, to the catalog, supplier catalog. So it is giving me the error. Spend category entry for the purchase item is not same as spend category of the selected catalog item. Okay, no problem. So basically that was a spend category validation. That's okay. Let's leave it for now. Okay, so this is how you will see a supplier catalog. Okay, you created the supplier catalog, and if you want to see it, so view supplier catalog. So if we want to see what are the other catalogs that exist, view supplier. Okay, so we have these many supplier catalogs. If I check IBM storage, so I have one item added here. So the, by this you can see like multiple supplier catalogs we already have in the system. Okay, all right. So switching back to the account posting rule for spend. So account posting rule, they are like the brains of the accounting engine. We already know that. So whatever transaction that you are doing, if you are making a purchase, so eventually you, for any purchase, for example, when you have created requisition, purchase order, invoicing, or receipting, so for any of these activities we will have the operational journals created at different levels. Okay, and how would the operational journals basically would get to know that okay, your purchase has to be mapped to which particular account and all. So this is where where account posting rule that we will define that for this and this condition, you post to this particular ledger account and so on. Okay. So again, for the account posting rule, it will go on the logic of if and then. For this condition, do this activity, and you would be knowing that in account posting rule, so it will follow the order from the most specified condition to the most broader. Okay, so from narrow to broad it goes. So meaning, like if you are creating a account posting rule on spend and spend hierarchies, okay, so if you have defined spend first, like you should be defining spend first, and then you should be defining the spend hierarchies, okay, or the spend category and spend category hierarchies. So uh, let's just quickly see the account posting rule. View account posting rule set or GMS standard rule. Standard account posting rule. No, standard account posting rule set. Okay. So we have the spend. Okay. So here we are seeing different ledger accounts with the dimensions given by company and spend category. Okay. They should have the spend category hierarchy, or we can add it also. So we'll go and edit the posting rule. And so I'm using the last use ledger account 41256. Click here, spend category hierarchy. So problem. Just for an example, so I was going for any spend category hierarchy which had something to do with consulting or IT services, just to make it more relatable, but that is okay. Uh, we will do it with the products. Okay. So you see here, we have, like what we did was, we have 41256 consulting services. We linked it to the spend category hierarchy. Okay. And this is the way that your account posting rule should be configured. Your spend category should come first, and then should your hierarchy. So it will always go from narrow to more broader conditions. Okay. So if your rule, so for example, you see here we have two dimensions, company and hierarchy. Okay. So this act as and here in the value act as or. Okay. So if your company is either PT aerospace or PT social media, and your spend category is PT tables, then it will load to 1037 ledger account. So similarly, we have few more. Okay. And then you saw that, okay, for till 133, we are having company and spend category as a conditions. Then we move to more broader one that we are only involving the spend category, no company filtration. After that, the last one, we kept the spend category hierarchy. In this, they can have whatever spend categories that would come in IT products, that all spend categories would be considered and will be posted to 41256 ledger account. Okay, so now we have created the account posting rule. So now, since we have covered the purchase items and catalog items, and we have seen the account posting rule. So let's start about the suppliers now. So we will cover supplier setup and supplier categories, groups, a little bit more about the punch out suppliers or the changes within the suppliers, PP for suppliers, etc. Okay. So when we are talking about the foundation setup, it consists of supplier types, tax region, and payment terms. And out of these three, the two most important, because two most important foundations would be the supplier types, basically the data about the metadata about the supplier, and the payment terms, like how they would want the payment to be configured for them. The third one, the tax region, so it can depend based on geography, right? In the UK, we have VAT. In US or India, we have GST. Okay, so different tax types there. And it can, like, for some suppliers, for example, let's take an example of startups or something, right? So tax things can depend from supplier to supplier. Some might have the tax related information, some might not have, but that's okay. But what they need to have is the payment terms, ideally, like where will you then settle the supplier invoices, right? So the payment terms should be there, and the basic supplier setup data should be there. So we will see what is that basic supplier. We'll do the configuration, and there you will see what are the different data types or metadata that we need to have for suppliers. So before we start the task, a few more things about before we do the supplier setup is the supplier category. So till now we have seen spend category. Similarly, we need to have a supplier category. So each and every supplier must be associated with a supplier category. Okay. And they can be associated with only one supplier category. So now, what is a supplier category? So supplier categories, they facilitate organization, searching, and reporting for the suppliers. Okay. So we can have different supplier categories, for example, IT distributor, office supplies, or anything, right? So this is one thing. Okay. And in fact, like the supplier categories. So similar to spend category, when we were seeing the account posting rules here, so supplier categories can also be used as one of the dimensions in the account posting rules. Okay, so supplier category is one point. Another is supplier group. Okay, supplier group is also, you can organize the suppliers of different goods and services into the useful. So consider it the supplier group as something like, let's suppose if there is a big company, for example, take the example of Dell itself. Okay, and Dell can have different smaller legal entities also. Correct. So Dell USA, Dell India, Dell UK, like that. Okay. So you can group all those suppliers into one supplier group. Okay. And category is more towards the purpose, that what purpose these suppliers are serving. Okay. So supplier group is kind of optional. You can or cannot have supplier group, and you can tag multiple suppliers into different groups. There is no, one to many relationship like we have in supplier category. That is, when I talk about one to many relationship, that means supplier category can have multiple suppliers, but one supplier can only be tagged to one supplier category. Okay, so this there is no such relation for supplier groups. Okay, you can have zero group or you can have multiple groups. That's fine. Now, so we covered supplier category and supplier group. And what is a supplier? Okay, we talked about the setup, but if you have to define that what is a supplier, so it's basically a business entity with which you are doing the business. Okay, you are buying any goods or service from the supplier, okay, from this business entity. Then similar to company hierarchy, cost center hierarchy, location hierarchies, we can have supplier hierarchies as well to define the parent child relationship. Okay, so you can have different supplier hierarchies listed, so it all depends upon the requirements. Okay, so when we were talking about supplier categories and groups, so you can see here as well about supplier categories, what can be strategically grouped together in a supplier category, and the supplier group as well. Okay, so we will also perform the task of maintaining the supplier category. We will see how we can create the supplier categories. Okay, and so we can also, like, there is one very good point here, the compliance category. Okay, so in addition to creating the supplier categories for a certain purpose, you can also have supplier category for the compliance purposes. Okay, so generally this is I think the rule across US or the government clients for US, that their suppliers should consist of MB or WB, basically minority owned business or women owned business, or they can have conflict minerals compliant, all those. So you can have that kind of category as well. But defining a supplier category completely depends upon your client needs, in what way they want to define the supplier category. Okay. So here in the table, you can also see that how a grouping can be done. Okay. A grouping can be done on the payment priority, and you might have provided the configuration parameter as discount for 2% of 10 net 30 days. Okay, and you can prioritize the ACH payments like that, or you can group by the risk profile, system sync, etc., etc. So we'll see about the supplier groups as well. Okay, along with that, we you will also hear a term about 1099 supplier. Okay, so what is a 1099 supplier? So it's very specific to US. Okay, so 1099 supplier is any supplier that is issued a US IRS 1099 form at the end of the year. So there is one form of 1099 from IRS. Okay, if that form is issued to that supplier becomes a 1099 supplier. Okay. So Workday also includes the supplier and their applicable payments in the 1099 reporting. Okay. So there is a separate, so we do not need to go in detail about this because this mostly falls into your tax modules. But from the knowledge perspective, we can check 1099 reports. Okay, if there are any Workday delivered reports in the system, we can check from there. And if in case, like if we are thinking about from the payment perspective, so all the parameters for these 1099 suppliers, that would be applicable into your supplier invoice at payment, etc. Okay. So for example, your invoice lines, okay, will include the lines with the spend category, which are mapped to 1099 categories. It's like that. Okay. Then we have another concept of supplier connections. Supplier connection can contain remit to connections and order from connections. So what is remit to connection? The basically when you are sending the payment, where you are sending the payment, and order from is like from which supplier you are ordering. Okay, making an order. So Workday also allows you to have multiple remit to or order from connections. Okay, so when we are doing the supplier setup, we'll see like how we can set up the remit to connection. Okay, and the order from connections as well. So basically, this connection, the remit to connection, will allow you to remit the invoice and payment. Basically, make the payments to whatever addresses you would have provided. Okay. And order from connections is available on the purchase order to order from one supplier multiple addresses. Okay. So basically, they can have multiple addresses and you can make the payment, basically remit to a particular connection to a particular address, and similarly make a purchase or order from a particular address or a connection. Okay, so let's do the demo now. So before we start doing the setup for suppliers, first we want to see about the company procurement options. Okay, so you remember when we were doing for GMS USA, when we checked about account posting rules and all. Okay, so we saw the company procurement option as well. Okay, so now we will explore what is that. So we'll go to edit company procurement options. So first of all, what is this particular task? So basically, we are defaulting certain things here in the task for the company. Okay, so we are default. So maybe you can think here that we are defaulting the unit of measure or something. So whatever information that we are giving here, we are putting a default for the company. So let's default the shipping information or the billing information. Wait a second. Yeah. So shipping and billing default. So I would want to give my ship to contract as Sherry Void. Okay. And bill to also Sherry. So now You can think of it that whenever your order is arriving, that would be on the name of Sherry. Okay. And the bill will also be generated on the name of Sherry. The shipping terms, we can see what are all the shipping terms available. FOB, destination, origin, free courier. So we'll do FOB origin. Shipping method, we have 10 one-day freight, APL, ground shipping, or roadway. Let's do priority overnight. We want everything very quick. Okay. So if I want default ship to location, we do not have. And anyway, that we should not default for a company because a company can exist at different locations and each location can order something, right? So here now we have defaulted our shipping and billing defaults. Now explore other tabs. In requisition, so we have enabled requisition default. We can also enable transaction tax on requisition. And we already have freight and other charges enabled already, and line attributes from linked purchase items that are also there. Okay, so for the purchase item options, do we want to enable anything? That's okay. Okay, all right. So let's see the sourcing now. So we have different options in sourcing consolidation options. Okay, consolidate requisition on purchase order. We can do that, or exclude ship to address when consolidating requisition line. This we can select. Okay, so this will override our ship to be okay. All right. So this will whenever we are consolidating the lines on the requisition, so this can exclude the ship to address. What all the other options to have? Generate PDF for the purchase orders, enable requisition auto sourcing for the non-catalog line. Then we have the line level auto sourcing options. Similarly, let's see for purchase order, what do we have? Exclude received quantity and amount from draft and in progress receipt. Automatically close purchase order. So we can select this. Okay. So what would happen, although we will discuss it later as well, when we are selecting automatically close purchase order. So when the purchase order has been fully received and invoice, that purchase order will automatically move to the close order. That means it's fulfilled, it's done, so it can be closed. Okay. But we will circle back to it later on as well when we are doing the purchase orders chapter. Then we have receipt, lot capture, serial capture, all those, create delivery per tracking number. But that's it for now, I guess, for the procurement options for the company. Okay. So we have changed our defaults for the GMS USA for procurement options. Okay. So this was at the company level. Let's suppose generally when we are implementing the clients, so it's not just one legal entity, they might have a number of different legal entities in the system as well. Okay, so what if you want to default uh, at the tenant level, you want to make some defaults at the tenant level. So How do we do that? We do that from the edit tenant setup. Edit tenant setup financials. So you see here we have the document ID. So basically these are all sequence generator. It's a long list where we want to make the changes, as in like, because this consists all the financials data that you can edit at the tenant level. So let's search for procurement. Yeah. So here we have the procurement option. In the procurement option, so let's see what all the options do we have. Disable Workday delivered duplicate supplier invoice validation on the supplier reference. This is a good validation, and we should not disable it. Okay. So this will check for the duplicates and all. Worker location on the spend transaction. Then we have ID generators. Okay. For the purchase item event. Then we have the ID generator for the purchase item request as well, and spend categories. Default requisition company from the user's previous requisition. Uh, Requisition ordering method, if we want to default some requisition ordering method. Then we have advanced check, advanced ship notes, enable purchase order acknowledgement. Okay. Then we have enable multi-company. We already have purchase order and requisition over here. Okay. So from different companies, you can create one requisition or purchase order. Okay. Then we have enable consolidation of requisitions across supplier contracts. I think we do not want to do that solely for the purpose of reporting. If I think of only defined ordering units of measure for the catalog and the supplier. So yeah, this is a good validation and default option that we'll only use the defined unit of measures for the items. So on, we have few more as well. Enable duplicate names for the purchase item, unit cost updates, enable patient charge information. So these are for the healthcare. Disable fully receive for the purchase order receipt. Enable spend category, supplier mismatch, alert for the requisition. So this is a good alert. Few more. So you can see if at all, like there is a need from your client, and if you want to default few options, or if you want to default on the sequence generator as well. So you can come to edit tenant set of financials and see in the procurement options. Okay. So now we will see about the requisition sourcing rules for a preferred supplier. But yeah, before that, let's configure a supplier. Okay. So the task is create supplier. So right now we first starting with the create supplier, and after that we'll see the supplier categories and supplier group. Okay. So I will give a supplier name, East Bay Vending. Then the supplier category as services. I can also have the supplier group, supplier A to L. Okay. The payment type, we can check. So default payment type also, I'm having check. Okay. If I had multiple payment types, and let's suppose we have direct deposit. So here I can select multiple from the default payment type also. Okay. So let's keep check at the moment. We'll have accept all currencies, and default currency I'm keeping as USD. Okay. Security segment, we'll come to it later on. What is the security segment for supplier as whole? Okay. We can also define the default payment terms. Let's keep it net 30. Okay. Although at the coming page, we'll also see this. And yeah. Okay. So you can also fill in generally in your business scenarios, you would definitely have the DUNS number for supplier. So you can add here that number. Click OK. So now we have, there is one supplier ID S0199. Okay. And you can see the status is draft. And we have this whole new page. All right. So let's see one by one what's all this. So you can restrict the supplier to certain companies, okay, or you can keep it open for all. The DUNS number would be there. The customer account number, if you have, you can add that. Then you have defined the payment terms. Okay, we can have different payment terms, 45 days, EOM, and 8%, 5, net 15. So it's kind of pretty intuitive when we are creating a supplier. Okay. So as like they have already given it section wise. So we have supplier details and payment details. Then we have a default supplier payment memo like that. If you want to put a default here. Okay. And yeah. So we have default currency and remittance integration system. Those all can be defined later on. Okay. But before proceeding further, you see Workday is also displaying 10 possible duplicates. Okay, cool. So we are good here. So you can see if there are any duplicates and all. Now coming over, we have the contact information. So see, we have contact information, we have bank account information for settlement, tax information, alternate name, procurement options, related work type classifications, and so on. Okay. So in the contact information, let's update email. We'll have Cindy the rate East Bay Vending.com. Okay. I'll mark it as primary and it will be used for billing, remit to, and shipping. Okay. Now let's Let's go to procurement options. And if you want to default anything, we can do that. Okay. So So if you see here in the purchase order option, I have given the issue option as email. So basically, your purchase order would be emailed to the email address that we have specified. Okay. Similarly, change order would be issued via email. Okay. Then we have few more. We have shipping terms, shipping method. Those all can be defined over here. Okay. Now let's go to the settlement bank account. So here I would just give the random account name, but you see what are the different information that is needed for the bank account information, East Bay Vending Citibank. So here we are putting the information of the bank account of the supplier. Okay. Let's see what do we have. Supplier connection payment types. 1 second. You see the accepted payment types for the supplier. Okay. So I'm having check, cash, and direct deposit all. Then payment types. I'm selecting all. We'll accept all the currencies, or let's leave it here. We already defined accept all currencies. Okay. So you can put more whether it requires pre-note or not, or for supplier connections only, like that. Now coming over to the first, we provided the account information, kind of a header level type of information. Okay. Now we will give the account details. Current country, USA, routing transit number. I know it might not accept. Okay. Citibank, account number. Okay. So basically, here in the account details, you would put the details of the supplier account, okay? The bank name, routing transit number, all those things you will add here. And if you have any intermediary bank accounts, you can add that as well. Okay, so this is your settlement bank account information. So what it will do, what is the significance of this information? So when the connections are made through integration, okay, while you are making the settlement of supplier invoice, So you would have one bank account of your company from which you are settling that invoice, and you would have a destination bank account for your supplier to which the payment will reach. Okay. So if you are doing end-to-end connections from Workday, or if you are involving Kyriba for your bank account integrations, so that is where this supplier bank account information would come in. Okay. So I will just remove this line, else it will give me an error for validation. Then we have the tax information. If I do 1099, so you see here we got an alert as well. We need to put the tax ID and select it as the primary ID for 1099 supplier. Okay. So we would need to put the default code and report it with parent. If it's parent child type of relationship, we can do that as well. And here we would need to define the tax ID information. Okay. So I'm just keeping it to select one. Then you can have alternate name of the supplier. What do we have in the related work tag? So we have cost center. Yeah, we do not want to define any default work tag on suppliers. So that is fine. Then we have the classification. We can link a supplier to a particular spend category or hierarchy as well, as we were discussing. So we can add the spend category or hierarchy over here. Then we have the contingent worker option, attachment and note. So if you want to have any notes, you can add that, okay, as a comment or something. Then if you want to have the attachments, okay, so generally in your business case scenarios, there will be attachments from your supplier. So whenever you are registering a supplier in Workday, so it's going to be a process where a lot of documentation would also be involved. Okay, so you might need to keep a record of supplier documents such as its registration or tax related informations, or maybe a few more as well. So this is where you can have the attachments added. Okay. So for now, we are good with all this information, and let's submit it. Okay. We got an error. Okay. So since we added one electronic payment type, you see here, so it must have a settlement bank account. Okay. So right now, since we do not have the settlement bank account, let's remove that electronic payment type, which is direct deposit. All right. And let's go with check only. Okay, cash is also not a good option in general practice. Supplier details must be attached. Okay, no problem. For the time being, let's create one. Okay, so you see one more thing here, that we have, like, Workday gives you an option to categorize the attachments as well. Okay, so as we were discussing, so you can configure the attachment categories as well. So as we were discussing that suppliers generally would have to provide different documents, and these documents can fall into, like, these can be different type of documents, right? One can be your company registration, which is a different document. Another can be your tax related document, or few more, right? If it is a small business, so that kind of document, or minority owned or women based enterprise. So a lot of documentations are already involved with the supplier setup. So you can provide the category as well for the document and submit. So now it is submitted. If I want to view, so so right now it's in progress. Approval is in progress. Okay. And what else do we have? Then it's awaiting action from these people. Any of these needs to approve the supplier. So yeah. Okay. So basically it's need to, so you can see a business process is triggered. Okay. When we have submitted the supplier. So we'll see about this business process later on. Okay. Uh, yeah. So we were talking about the different statuses here. If you see, we have different status. We started with draft, now it's in approval in progress. So these are right now BP specific. Okay. Once it is approved, like the BP is completed, it will move to the approved status. So that's one thing. Another is, what are the different, like, if we talk about other statuses, it can be inactive, on hold. Okay. So what does that mean? So right now, if we see here, it's inactive. Basically, it will not operate. Okay. And if it is on hold, so that is also another status where your payments might not be made to a particular supplier, which is on hold. Okay. So that would not be used in transactions. Okay. For inactive and on hold, so apart from that, if your supplier is working, so it would be the active status. For inactive or on hold type of statuses, you can have the different reasons for putting them on hold. That can be like, if let's suppose the supplier, any other supplier is also created with the same name or account number, like that, if the duplicate is existing based on the different data parameters that Workday defines. Okay, so if it's a duplicate supplier, so it can be put on inactive status, that since it's a duplicate, it will not be used or not used. Or if the business went if the supplier went out of business, so it can be put on inactive or on hold type of statuses. If let's suppose any documentation changed, so your supplier is registered, uh, so it's an active status. But later on, from law perspective, anything changed, then your supplier might need to provide the new documentation or something. So till that they are not providing documentation, you might not want to do business with them or make any transactions with that particular supplier. So you can put that supplier on hold status. Okay. So now let's see the Supplier BP. First of all, let's just approve it. Let's try to proxy from Eva's ID. So proxy. Okay. So if I see the process here, so Aston Burns is also a supplier administrator. Okay. So let him approve. You see here, approve. Okay. So now we have few tasks which are in awaiting action, but they are not assigned to anybody. Let's see if we can assign these tasks. Okay. I'm assigning it to Western Burns itself. This way we would have to do this reassignment again and again. Yeah. Submit. Then we have settlement account change. So you see a lot, we will see the business process. We see here for the business process part of this. Uh, okay, I'm trying to reassign this task. Okay, right now it's still in inactive status. Bank account change event and contact info. We had settlement bank account change event and contact info. Okay. Okay, reassign to. I'm not sure. Okay, no problem. But so basically, we were trying to complete the business process here, but since we are not able to reassign the task, that is fine for now. But let's see the business process because the business process in itself is very interesting here. And this is how the business process can be configured for suppliers usually. So we have the supplier event, and from the supplier event, we have the child business processes, which is supplier settlement bank account change event and contact info change event. Okay. Um, so if I go to the BP, see how it is created. BP event. Okay, so you see it consists of 7 steps. Okay, it starts with initiation. The second step would be create Workday account for the supplier contact, BP. Okay, so it would be done by supplier administrator. Then we have few conditions. If the work account is created for the supplier contact, okay, so here the group would be supplier contact as self. Let me just open this group. So you see here in this group, we have different domain security policies here. So what is this group? This is supplier contact as self. So basically, the users from the supplier end. So it's the group for those users. Okay. Not your company Workday users, but the supplier users. Okay. So anyone from any representative from the supplier end. So the domain security policy on which this particular security group sits on is for the self-service, we have supplier contact task, contact change catalog, activity stream, then we have the landing pages, then we have for the process as well, purchase order acknowledgement, manager view, supplier portal, settlement bank account process. So the settlement bank account that we were talking about, and eventually what is being linked back to the business process. Okay. Contact information, alternate name, classifications, those things. The attachments, then we have few more. So in total, like there, you can see there are 25 items for which this particular group has the permission, and you can see the functional area also. So this is all falling into supplier contracts, procurement, and some system specific. So these like landing page and all that is like okay, but for us the most important would be procurement and supplier contracts. Okay, so this is the domain security policy permission. And if you want to see on the business processes, like where all it is there. So at the business process level, it's supplier catalog for the initiation step. Sorry, for the catalog load. Then we have the purchase order acknowledgement event. So whenever a purchase order is created and issued to the supplier, so they also needs to acknowledge the purchase order. Okay, the receipt. Then we have few more. At the supplier end, we have alternate name change, classification, contact information. In the supplier event, supplier invoice event, invoice request, okay, settlement bank account. So if I want to see the members here, I can see these are all the members. Okay. So you see here, we have different business processes being linked here. Okay. In a way, then we have Workday account created for supplier contact. Then the other action would be create the settlement bank account. Okay. So how it will happen? You created the supplier, the with the bare minimum information and all. Okay. And you created the Workday account for the supplier contact. So eventually they also needs to have a contact, sorry, a Workday account. Okay. So that is also created. Then those supplier contact will update your contact information and the settlement bank account. And they will also manage the attachments or supplier request BP. Okay. If it is like, if from supplier request BP, create supplier restrict, like it's linked back to the create supplier. Okay. After all these actions are taken, then there would be approval from supplier administrator, then the approval from controller with certain other conditions being met. Okay. So this is how you can see three different business processes are also linked to the same one business process. Okay. So this was one business process, a supplier event. We also have another business process as supplier change event. Okay. So supplier change would be once you have created any supplier and it is approved, it's active in the system, and now they want to change something, some information. So whenever that change is made in any existing supplier, so a supplier change event business process will be triggered. So why do we have this business process? It's very important from the supplier management perspective because you would want to oversee any change activity that supplier is also making in their account. So for example, if the payment terms have been changed, okay, so initially you agreed on net 30 days, then the supplier came in and they want to change it to net 15. So it's not like that they change the payment terms to net 15 and the system would accept. Okay. If they do that, then from the company and think of the procurement team, they would never know that, okay, uh, because payment is something very big, right? So payment term has been changed from 30 to 15 days and they are not even aware about that. So that's why to keep an oversight, we do have a business process specifically for the supplier change event. So if any change is happening into the existing supplier, it will trigger a business process or a series of work approval workflows. Okay. So you see here, for example, so see here also you can define certain conditions like if the bank account is changed. So there you are having a particular step or condition and the approval. So for example, here they are talking about the supplier settlement bank account or alternate name or the contact information. If any of these three are changed, it will trigger an approval. Then um, in addition to these three, if there is no current assignee or prior approver, so it will go to controller like that. Okay. So we have the supplier change event BP as well. So now let's create a supplier change. Okay. So we will make a change to any existing supplier because somehow we couldn't get this particular supplier approved. Let's just try one more time. No problem. Because we do not have any supplier contact created as of now. Okay, in Workday. So that's why we are not able to approve or move ahead with the further steps. That is fine. But so let's find any existing supplier. Okay. So the shortcut is supplier and you would just type the name of what supplier you are searching. So I'll go with Staples. So in the related action, so you see there are few change options: change alternate name, classification, contact information, bank account, or create a supplier change. Okay. We have few maintain options as well. So we will change contact information. We have the phone, then we have the address here. If I want to see the detail, so we have this address. Okay. So we selected the address, and now you can change the supplier address. Okay. So right now this is phone. Then you move over. We have the address information here. If I want to change the address line to 500, like from 500 to 550 or 600, something like that, and so on. If I want to change the state, the city, all those things, if I want to change, we can make a change here. Okay. And if I want to make a change or add an email or a web address, make a change in web address, all those things I can do here. So I'm not going to do right now. Let's see the other options that we have for edit. If I want to change the alternate name, okay, primary name is Staples. Let's okay this, and it does not have any prime alternate name. So you can add the alternate name here as well and define the usage, okay, where it needs to be used. So maybe we can add it for the remit to connection or remit to pay, like that. So in this way, you can create a supplier change. So basically, you go to supplier related actions. From the supplier option, you would have a lot of other options and you can make a change here. Okay, if you want to view any additional data, so additional data would be out of all the fields that have been defined over here. If the client have any other specific requirement and you are creating some custom field or anything, so you can view the additional data from here. Okay, and business process, we have the hierarchy, integration IDs. We can see the payments if we want to see if any payment was made earlier. Okay, from GMS USA to the payee Staples. So you can find the payments. Okay, so we have 6 payments that were being made to Staples. Okay, so what else? We can also create the custom reports using the fields that are being displayed on that page. The roles, supplier refund, if you want to record any supplier refund, the work tag reports from here, and so on. Okay. So now let's see the supplier category or supplier groups. We have maintain supplier category. Okay. So we have some 11 supplier categories: automobiles, IT, intercompany, merchandise, office supplies, utilities, etc. Services. Once again. So if I want to create a new supplier category, I would just add a line over here and define the name. Okay. So understand this, that the supplier category. So usually these maintain type of tasks. Okay. Maintain supplier category, maintain payment types, maintain supplier groups. Okay. Or across Workday for other modules also. So these maintain type of task is usually you are only defining certain names and kind of just like, it would generally have 1 to 2 columns altogether where you would have to provide information. Mostly like they are used for your classification purpose. Okay, classification or segregating different information types. Okay, so for example, here we have the categorization of suppliers. Okay, so you do not need to have a complete full-fledged form that we have when we are creating the supplier. It is essentially one data point which is used when you are creating a supplier. Okay. So maintain supplier groups. We have 9 supplier groups. Okay, that are there. What else? We have supplier classifications. So the classification category we have as diversity. Okay, and we have here some effective dates and all if you want to put in. Yeah, but mostly your supplier category and supplier groups are used, and the most important one is your supplier category. Let's see what is the supplier category for staples, just out of curiosity. Office supplies and supplier group they have defined as M to Z. Okay, all right. So now that we have supplier created, we understood the supplier change and your categories, groups, etc. Let's move on and create a requisition. Yeah. But before that, let's create a supplier contract. Okay. So before we started suppliers, we understood the procurement item, basically item management. We saw how we can create the items and all. And now we saw that how we can do the setup for the suppliers. Now let's create a supplier contract. So when we are creating the supplier contract, we will use the catalog that we created when we were doing the item management. Okay, we will the catalog that we created, corporate express vending. So we will use that catalog, and through that we will create a supplier contract. Okay, so the task is create supplier contract. So the task is create supplier contract. The company I will define as GMS USA. Supplier we are using as Corporate Express. Contract type, let's keep it as catalog contract. Okay. and we are selecting blank, create blank supplier contract. Okay. If you already have any supplier contract and you want to copy the details from the existing supplier contract, you can do that as well. Okay. If so, you see we have few existing contracts as well. But let's see what happens when we create from the blank supplier contract. We'll do OK. And so we already have few information being filled in. Okay. If you see, I am logged in from a different ID because we were not able to access this task earlier, and also on a different tenant because, yeah, we are able to create the supplier contract here due to some security restrictions. The other one, DPT2, wasn't working. Okay, so we are working on PT1 now. The contract name that I'm gonna put is Corporate Express Lending 2026, 2026. The sign date, we can take it as today's date. Okay, and end date, we can keep it as next year, 2027-08. Okay, so we are creating a 1-year contract. The total contract amount I'm gonna add as 7,000. So my currency is USD. Now, if we move forward, we can also define the payment terms here. We can define that, but it's okay. The tax code also can be defined, but let's come here in the catalog item pricing. So we are going to select an existing catalog. You can create a supplier catalog from here, or you can select an existing catalog. So I'm going to select Corporate Express Vending. We will also give a discount of 5% in the goods line. So now we will add the line items here. So this catalog can have multiple items. Out of that, out of those items, we are adding few items here in our contract. Okay, line item number 1. Item I'm going to take as soda machine. Okay. Tax, we will keep it as non-taxable sales. And in the location, quantity, quantity we'll keep it as 1. Okay. The unit cost is 2,500. What else do we have? We have ship to address, ship to contact. That is fine. Location is there. And buyer name, cost center. So let's keep the cost center as 61100. Okay. So you can put in customer revenue category, additional work tax, all those things. Now we are going to add the second line as well. Line number would be 2. Item, I'm gonna choose as water machine. Okay, so this is already in use. No problem. Let's choose water cooler. Okay. So again, non-taxable sale. Quantity is again 1, and let's do 3 quantity. Yeah. Okay. And let's add the cost center. 340000. Do we have facilities? Yeah. Let's add over here as well facilities. Okay. So now I have added the line items. And click on submit. So before submitting, so this was the goods line when we were creating the contract. Okay. In case the supplier was providing services, so we will enter the service lines. Okay. If it was project based services, we will enter the project based services line. Then would come the tax related information, attachments, and notes. Okay. So for now, let's, if you see, we totally, what is the like total cost of the contract as of now? We had 24 plus how much? 2500. So 4900 is the total cost of the contract. Okay, extended amount is there, but the total that we are giving for this contract is 7000. Out of that 7000, we are making a purchase of 4900. Okay, click on submit. Let's see what is the error. Okay, so let's select a different date range. Let's do it till 2028. So I have changed the currency here. Okay, and the name. So now it should submit. Yeah. So now being the contract submitted and it is pending the approval by accounting manager. Okay. So if you want to see the details here, so because we were getting the error, since with the same information, another contract is already created. So we changed the company and the date of the contract and the name as well. So we went with GMS Germany. Okay. And this contract is from today's date till 8th of February 2028, a 2-year contract. So basically, what you need to understand here is the line items that we have added here. Okay. And we created this contract from the existing catalog. So the catalog items are also available here. Okay. So suppose right now for this, there were only 2 catalog items. Okay. In case if there are hundreds of catalog items and you have created a contract out of 5 items. Okay. From those 100, you selected 5 items and you created a contract. So you see, the whole process is very easy here, right? Like we have the information and all. We have an existing catalog. You just selected those items. You provided like what is the number of items you want from that, the cost center. Okay. And obviously, in the business scenario, you would have few more data points over here. So we'll add that and that's it. Okay. After entering it, so your contract is created. Okay. Done. So then it will go for approval and all, but that's how you create the contract. In Workday, you can also have a preferred supplier. Okay. Um, so let's create a requisition to see how you can have a preferred supplier. Okay. So we are going to create a new sourcing rule. Okay. And in there, we are going to have a preferred supplier. So the task is maintain requisition sourcing rules. In the buyer tab, so first of all, let's see what are the information that we have. Okay, we have the company, the requisition type, addresses, work tags, then we have the spend category and resulting buyer. Okay, so if we see here for this particular, for GMS, so we added, so first of all, like proceeding with the bare minimum information. So we have the company, which is the mandatory item. Okay. So we are creating the rule for the buyer. Buyer is GMS USA and the resulting buyer is submitted by the worker on requisition. So whoever is the worker, when they are submitting a requisition, so that would be the resulting buyer. Okay. Now let's see the suppliers tab. So you see here, we have GMS USA. We define the spend category and we define the resulting supplier. Okay, so what it is like what it is saying is for this particular company, okay, if the shipping address is this, the spend category and the purchase items are this, then the resulting supplier would be Corporate Express. So for example, if I'm going to buy for GMS USA with a purchase item, I can define a purchase item here. Okay. So I'm going to buy from Corporate Express. So this is my preferred supplier. Let's see what do we have in order from connection. So we can define the supplier here. Corporate Express. I'll have the company GMS USA. Okay. We can define the purchase order, ship to address, spend category. and the resulting order from connection. So we do not have any item here. So basically you can select the order from connection in this option. Okay. Let's see. Let's check for staples. So, okay. So for the supplier, we do not have any order from connection as of now. So that's fine, but you can use this, like use this task for your requisition rules. Basically, you can define the preferred supplier by defining the spend category, company, etc. Or you can define the order from connections as well. Okay. And similarly, the buyer perspective also. So let's delete it. So we check the supplier category and groups. Okay. And we also saw the supplier changes. So just from the theory perspective, like any modification that is made to an existing supplier, it will be tracked through create supplier change task, or you go to supplier and related actions, supplier and different tasks that you get, like change supplier, alternate name, contact info, etc. Okay. So you submit a request and attach the documents and all, and it will trigger a supplier change event BP. Okay. So you can tag the progress, you can track the progress through the BP as well as from the pending like supplier change history report also. So from the workflow perspective, it can look something like this. Requester, they will create the supplier change, enter the details, attach document, submit. Supplier master data of procurement. So validate the, basically have an oversight here and approve or send back. So once it's approved, then maybe going to finance or EP team to verify the banking, tax or payment impacting data, approve it, or else if it is a legal type of change, okay, so approve that as well through controllers and all. Supplier record will be updated. So once all the approvals are done, then the supplier record would be updated and the notification will be sent. So common use case for supplier change can be updating remit to address for ACH payments, adding diversity certifications, adjusting payment terms for strategic partner. Okay. So like we were discussing, that any change in the documentation or payment terms or any connection like remit to addresses updation, that can trigger your supplier changes. Okay. So Workday have few other tools as well for the better collaboration between supplier and the company. Okay. So there is one self-service portal wherein, so we were talking about having the supplier account created in Workday, right? So that would be the self-service. Yeah, that would be one way where supplier can update the information in the Workday. The second is through the strategic sourcing, Workday strategic sourcing, WSS. So there The outside, so suppliers that are not registered in Workday, they can also, collaborate. So how they can collaborate? So for example, if the company has issued any RFP, okay, so suppliers which are not registered in your system, they can also apply to the RFPs. Okay. And then we have the self-service portal as well within Workday, wherein suppliers can update information, and along with that, they can request for the invoices or uh, create the PO acknowledgement, okay, all those type of information. And along with that, they can also receive the real-time notifications as well. Okay. So then there is contract collaboration, wherein we have the shared workspace where like supplier and the company can co-author the contracts with the version control. Okay, so contracts are also like, so basically these are all documents, right? Contract, purchase orders. So these are all documents, and any changes in the existing contract or purchase order will result in the changed version as well. Okay, and for the legal purposes and for your maintaining the repositories, histories. So there will be a lot of documentation. So procurement is one domain where there is a lot of documentation involved, and a very big collaboration as well, because there are third parties involved in the terms of supplier, as well as because we have integration with other systems, for example with the banking system, the touch point being over there. So that in itself will involve another party. Okay, so a lot of collaboration is required in procurement systems. Okay, so whenever you have any change in the contracts and all, so generally the supplier team as well as the company's procurement team, so they can work together in maintaining those documentations. Then we have, one very major integration is for the e-signature. So DocuSign and Adobe Sign are one of the major players for that. Okay, because now the things are digitized. So at each and every stage, so whenever typically the contract creation that we saw, that was very straightforward from the catalog point of view. But generally, when there are master agreements or master service agreements being created, so that involves a lot of parties. Okay, because these contracts are created. Think of it as, very big organizations creating 5-year type of contracts. So these involve a lot of money, in millions and in millions basically. So it's not like you will just have one approval from your finance department. It will involve a lot of approvals from other departments also. So there will be legal department involved. There will be, from finance department, different levels will be involved, your CFO, your comptroller. Then in case if you are a public service company, okay, so your budget team will be involved as well. So a lot of, collaboration between different parties. So in there, like there are signatures and all, that is also involved. So we have very much different types of integrations as well. Like it can depend on your company, what is the requirement. But generally in contracting, you would have the major integrations like with the bank, with the payment systems, basically with signatures involving with DocuSign or Adobe Sign, or you will have some DocuVault type of integrations as well to maintain the documentations in case if you are not maintaining within Workday. So those things. But yeah, Workday can also, give you the ability to have the version control documents also. So, yep. So these are major, supplier collaboration tools that can be used. Okay. So from the risk mitigation point of view, there can be automated alerts for insurance or certifications that are being getting expired, or you can have the centralized repository for the compliance documentations, etc. So with this, we are coming to the end of our chapter for suppliers. And today's interesting point for this chapter is that Workday provides support for the industry standards, basically in procurement domain. So whatever industry standards that can be implied, that can be included in your supplier content side. So basically, United Nations Standard Protocols and Service Code, National Institute of Government Purchasing, categorization, and punch out. So these are different industry standards within suppliers. So Workday supports all of these industry standards in at one cohesive platform.